guys, how are you doing? Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking you through some of the pros and cons of being a professional freerunner. Now I mean that as an athlete rather than a coach or gym owner. And also I want to point out that some of these things will relate to any professional athletes, whether you're a freerunner or footballer, tennis player, etc, etc. And some of these things will relate to any freelancers. And there may even be a few things in there where you think, actually I work 9 to 5 in an office and that relates to me as well. So I'm not saying these only relate to freerunners, but these are just a few of the things that I have found over my years as a professional freerunner. So first of all, the most obvious plus point to being a professional freerunner is that I get to do freerunning every day, and obviously it's something that I'm super passionate about. In fact, when I first started doing freerunning as my career, so straight out of uni I decided that I wanted to pursue a career as a professional freerunner, I was a little bit worried that I might lose some of my passion for the sport. However, I can honestly say, hand on heart, that that has not happened. In fact, I would say that I am more passionate than ever about the sport, and I get to make a living out of it. So that has got to be the main plus point. I get to do parkour every day. Now, without a doubt, the biggest con of being a professional freerunner is injuries. Obviously, injuries are painful, they're demoralising, they set you back in your training, but depending on how bad the injury is, they can also stop you from working. I've had times in the past where I've had to turn down shoots because I've just been too injured to do them. I've also had times where I've been injured on set and I've been sent home early from a job. So while injuries are annoying for everyone, they become especially frustrating when you're a professional athlete. I've also had times actually where I've had minor injuries and I've still agreed to do shoots because sometimes you just gotta work. And that can be really difficult because you're really aware of the fact that you shouldn't be doing certain things and you're just having to do them anyway. And that can be not the nicest feeling in the world. Obviously, if you have a sponsor, it's a little bit different because you have that regular income coming in, but I don't have a sponsor, so sponsor me. Another pro of being a professional freerunner is that you don't have a set 9 to 5. I went back and looked through my 2017 diary and I think I found that I worked something like 100 days of the year on a shoot or recce or fitting day, and the rest of the time, so over 2/3 of the year, I was essentially able to make my own schedule and make my own work plans. That doesn't mean that I wasn't working on those days, I'll come to that in just a bit, but it does mean that I was able to decide how I wanted to spend that time. So say for example, if I got home really late from training one day, I could decide that actually I'm gonna lie in the next day and start my day a little bit later, or I don't know, just it gives you a little bit of flexibility to be able to make your own schedule and your own plan. So speaking of my work schedule, there is a lot of non-physical work that goes into being a professional freerunner. And I don't consider that to be a con because I think in any job, if you want to be successful, there's going to be a lot of work involved. However, it can be a little bit frustrating when people don't realise how much non-physical work goes into your job. So I've literally had conversations with people where they've been like, oh, it must be so nice to just have to work a few days here and there and the rest of the time you're free to do what you want. And I'm like, okay, I see where you're coming from because you're talking about paid work, you're talking about the shoots that I do, but I'm still working the rest of the time. I mean, I've got admin to be getting on with, you know, emails back and forth to clients, editing videos, marketing myself, so things like social media, that actually takes up a lot of time. Big companies have teams dedicated to these things, and as a freelancer you kind of have to do that yourself. Then there's sorting out my taxes because I'm self-employed, and then there's Skype calls and phone calls with clients or replying to inbox messages. I mean, there's just all of these things that people don't necessarily see. And then on top of that, there's the physical side, so the training and the shoots. And that's all well and good. I mean, everyone has a lot of work to do, and I'm not saying that, oh, us professional freerunners have so much more work to do than everyone else. But it can just be a little bit frustrating when people don't see that you do all of that as well. One of my favourite things about being a professional freerunner is that it's given me so much opportunity to travel. Since I've been doing this full time, it's taken me to 5 different continents and at least 20 countries, so I'm really, really thankful for that. But then almost on the flip side of that is the fact that with all the travelling I do and the fact that shoots can come up super, super last minute sometimes, is that you have to make sacrifices. So I've missed out on doing things with friends and family, such as birthday parties or holidays or just meals out with friends or engagement parties. The list goes on, And sometimes it's difficult to be that unreliable friend who never knows if they're going to be able to make it or not. Because having no set work structure means that it's difficult to even know what I'm going to be doing next week, let alone next month, and certainly not the year after. Another pro of being a professional freerunner is that it keeps you very physically fit. Now, I'm not saying that anyone working 9 to 5 in an office is any less fit than I am, because I know there are people out there who put so much time and energy into their training outside of their work hours. But I know that for me personally, I'm a lot fitter now than I would be if I was in a 9 to 5 office job. And kind of on a similar note is the fact that being a professional freerunner teaches you how to self-motivate and how to really push yourself hard, because unlike in other sports, most pro freerunners don't have a coach or a set training schedule that's made for them, so they have to decide those things for themselves, and I think that's a skill that I will definitely take on with me to any future jobs that I do. One of the biggest negatives about being a professional freerunner is that there's no guaranteed paid work. So you could have one year where you're doing really well, you've got loads of shoots coming in, you've done well in competitions, but you could have another year where actually, even though you're training your hardest and you're putting out what you think is great content, there might just be less work going around. And sometimes you might even not know when your next job's coming in. And that can be a little stressful at times. I know, especially when I first started doing this, I had moments where I really had to question whether or not I could justify doing this as my full-time career. Of course, if you do have a sponsor, it's a little bit different because you have that regular income. But if, like me, you don't, it's another thing that you have to think about when you consider freerunning as a potential career. When you do have work come in though, one thing I love about my job is how varied it is. So I could be a grandma one day and a ninja the next. Or sometimes I get to double really cool people. Or sometimes I get to play my own character where there's a little bit more acting involved. Or recently actually, some of my jobs have allowed me to talk to camera more, which is something I really love doing. If you couldn't tell, that's why I make these videos. And sometimes you're literally just brought in to do the action, whereas other times productions really get you involved with the production side of things, so scouting out locations, suggesting costume and content ideas, and as I mentioned before, you get to travel to all these amazing places, so no 2 days in the office look the same. The final con I want to mention is the shorter shelf life of being a professional freerunner. Now, there's no two ways about it. Freerunning puts a lot of force through your body that you just don't get in other mainstream jobs. So even though there are guys like Bo Kendall who are still working professionally doing parkour, even though they're a little bit older, I know that for me personally there's going to come a time where I'm no longer progressing in the sport and I'm going to need to think about a career change. And that could be moving into stunts, because it's usually considered that stunt performers have a slightly longer shelf life, they can keep going a little bit longer, or coaching, or there's so many things that I could go into, but it's definitely one of the sadder cons of being a pro freerunner that it has this slightly shorter shelf life. And then finally, I wanted to finish on a positive note, and that is the fact that in being a professional freerunner, you get to be part of this incredible young sport that is growing so quickly, where boundaries are constantly being pushed and world firsts are being thrown down left, right and centre. I mean, seriously, things that were considered impossible 5 years ago are now just taken as standard, and it's absolutely awesome. I love this sport. I would not change my career for the world, and I'm going to carry on doing it just as long as my body allows me to. So that's it for this video. I hope that gives you a little bit more insight into what it's like being a professional freerunner, the things that are great about it, and the things that are maybe not so great about it. I know I'll probably have left out a few things, and I'll come to edit this video tomorrow and be like, oh, why didn't I include that? But these were the first things that came into my head. But if you do have any questions, let me know in the comments below whether you're interested in freerunning as a career for yourself, or if you're just interested in general, and I'll try and answer those questions for you. So hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!